Right, welcome to the next episode of Rounders Reconnect. And I have the absolute pleasure, and I must say, and we must admit to everybody, for the last 20 minutes, the next person, Mike Kennedy, and I have just been discovering in rugby league that we both have a passion and a love for rugby league, which has been awesome. But actually, what we're here to discuss today is actually your passion for Rounders. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks.
Welcome to this episode. Tell us a bit more about how you got involved in Rounders, and well, where are you from initially, and how you got involved in Rounders?
Well, I'm from St Helens, and I was born in Wiston, which is near Liverpool, in 1961. One of four kids. Mum was a sports teacher, and when I was about 20, I think it was, maybe a bit older, I was on the committee of a club, and it was basically a snooker club where a lot of old guys went. And I thought, how can you get people coming into the club? And as an ex-rugby player, you get the social side afterwards. And I thought, if we can get some women involved in the club and help run it and things. So it wasn't particularly at first that I liked Rounders. It fitted the bill. So then I went to see Rory Orlandi, who was the head teacher at the local primary school, St Thomas of Canterbury. And he said, I said, could you put it in the bulletin, school bulletin, looking for women, because the St Helens League has been going for 50 odd years. So he puts it in the school bulletin, and before I knew where I was, I had like 30 women ringing up and texting me saying, I've not played since our little Debbie was born, or Philip, or the name of the kid anyway.
Yeah.
And I started the team called Canterbury Belles, because the school was St Thomas Canterbury, and Belles, as with an E, is like the Bells of St Trinians.
Yeah.
For those of you old enough to remember it, the Bells of St Trinians at Margaret Rutherford, roll your sleeves up, get stuck in, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So did you join a league then, or was it just like a social?
Well, yeah. The St Helens League have been going 50 odd years, and I met up with a lady called Fred Crawford. Her real name's Frederica, but it's shortened to Fred. And I got involved with Alan Fergus, who was one of the top people at Rounders England, and said, I want to put a team in the league. So we did that. And then we were training one night, and I'd thrown enough ground bait around. In the end, ended up with too many players. So I remember one night we were actually training, and some girls turned up. And unfortunately, some of the team players said, I don't know why you come, we've got a team. So I gave the girls all the subs back and said, well, there you go. If you want to start another team, that's fine. So two teams were born out of that first team, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So couldn't you have had two teams as part of that team? Was that?
Well, the problem is that amateur sports, if it's rounders or anything, needs volunteers to make it work. And I knew that I'd rather do one job 100% than two jobs at 50%. So I was quite happy because they found volunteers amongst their team, and they called the Warriors. They were called the Warriors, and they both played for over 20 years in the local league.
Wow.
Sadly, in any amateur sport, you've got to fill. If you've got a hole in your bucket and you're losing players, you've got to keep water coming in the top to keep the same level. Number of players, and there's a tendency for people to say, we've got our gang, we've got our team, we don't need anybody else. And of course, there's nothing you can do about getting older. And so you need to recruit and be involved in the future,
Yeah. So was that in the 1980s then when you sort of set up the team? And
oh no, it's much later than that. That was just maybe 2000, something, or just after 2000. Yeah.
Right. And it kept on going. So it kept on going for a good 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. So I mean, and a lot of people who I met down the road just chatting. I mean, there's a lovely story. I met a girl called Jan Griffith. She worked for Mersey Travel, and I mentioned the fact that I've got this team. Oh, she said, I've not played since I was 11 at St Bede's in Huyton, which is obviously near Liverpool. And so why don't you come down? Anyway, fast forward now 18 months, she ends up going for trials for England and getting in the England team, which is 3 are phenomenal,
Oh, obviously, yeah.
And the competition for England, I mean, I know rounders is a comparatively small sport compared to rugby and football, etc. But to get to that standard of playing for England from actually not doing it is
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's great, and it's great that they've got that pathway, isn't it? So that you've got something to aspire to.
Yeah. Pointing people in the right direction, I suppose. And I believe in putting things on the menu, it's making things available to people, whatever it may be, something good, you know. And then if it's on the menu, people can choose it. If they don't know it's there, you've no choice, have you?
No, absolutely. I like that. I like that analogy. So you must have. So did you coach an umpire? Did you actually ever play? So what sort of roles have you played?
Yeah, I played to the Rounders England rules. I became a coach, level 2, then I did my level 3 through Sport England. So I'm actually a coach's coach, if you understand what I mean. That's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
it works. You understand it. And then I became an umpire tester, putting people through the paces. And the biggest thing for that really is telling people to move, when you're umpiring. You do understand that being an
Yeah,
ex-referee yourself. You've got to be close enough to see what's going on, but not too close that you get in the way.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also to see so that you can see what's so you can get around the players, because I imagine it's so fast moving, isn't it, when it gets to a certain level?
Well, yeah, because when players are on bases, like second and third base or whatever, you've got to keep your eye open. For example, making sure they don't let go of that post before the ball's bowled. Um, Being on fourth base for players coming home for a round and making sure that the backstop has either beaten the batter to the base or vice versa. And the big thing to remember, and it's the same across a lot of sports, is if it's a split decision, the advantage got to go to the attacking side, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. So did you get very involved in sort of the development of the rules then? And
Not so much the rules as such, but I did invent, if that's the word, a game called Rainbow Rounders.
oh, right.
Yeah, which is where you'd have a bib, whatever colour it is, but then you'd have an armband with a separate colour on. So all the blues, people were put in ability and not just chronological, their age. And so people with similar bands had similar abilities. So you had a blue ball into a blue, a red ball into a red, so that bigger kids didn't get the chance to bully, younger kids or weaker batters or whatever. So it includes everybody, and I had the idea to bring families together to actually play the game together, because anybody who loves rounders as I do, rounders is a great way of involving families. On the beach with a picnic or in the park when we get a summer. I think summer was last Tuesday round here.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, you had your local team then, but then you started doing more with families and everything then locally.
Yeah,
And school, was
Helena.
that schools?
Yeah, it was schools. I went to numerous partnership development managers in the schools and supporting them, telling them what's available. Got involved with doing like leaders courses where the senior schools would buddy up with the local primary schools because they work in families or clusters. They used to call them clusters, where a senior school would adopt the feeder schools, the primary schools, and work with them. So that was pretty good. And then I ended up in Liverpool working with the Chinese community, they called the Pagoda Project, and got talking to them, and then they ended up putting a national Chinese team in a competition in near Rotherham, between Rotherham and Sheffield, I think, Phoenix Sports Ground. That's what. And Alan Fergus was there, and a few of the other people, and I think the Murder Rotherham actually turned up on the day. But I got funding for it through the Liverpool City Council. It was, and because they were classed as like a minority group, that no one had ever been in there to talk to them, to encourage people to join in, and to say, again, going back to the menu, what's available. So I ended up actually paying for a 53-seater coach. So there's about 20 players, 20 Chinese players, all women because it was a women's competition. and they came with their families and had a fantastic day out. So that's one to remember.
Oh, it is.
I've had some great times. I mean, the one that comes to mind. Sorry to be hogging this conversation, but
No, it's your conversation. It's your interview.
well, I went to Gibraltar. I contacted the schools in Gibraltar because it's one of my favourite places. And for anyone who knows Gib, or as they call it, there's a couple of senior schools who have the AstroTurf, and it goes up to the fence of the runway. So I'm on this AstroTurf with about 40 kids and a couple of teachers, both PE teachers. And I can hear this rumbling noise in the background because it was a 737 waiting to take off. So this fence, the wingtip of the plane was about, I'd say about 10 foot away from where I was stood. And having two Rolls-Royce engines boom down your ear at, over 100 miles an hour. I don't like the words surreal. It's really overused, but it was totally. So I just folded my arms and put my hand up like that and saying, I'll be back with you in a minute. And, that was something to remember, yeah.
So how did you end up? So were you working for the Rounders Associate? It would have been England Rounders by then, wouldn't it?
Rounders England, yeah.
Rounders England.
I went all over the country, really. Walsall, Northey, all over. Newcastle University a few times, Coach Lane in Newcastle, Walsall, Sheffield Academy in the Midlands. Doing either leaders courses, level 1, level 2 courses, coaching for teachers, and I was reckoning up how many people who trainee teachers, mainly PGCE students, actually I met over the course of doing the coaches coaching, and I reckon it's just under about 2,000 of them. And of course now they'll be dotted all over the country if they're still working as teachers or PE consultants. So sports development as well came into the equation as well. There's a lot of local authorities at it, and I was lucky to be awarded Coach of the Year in 2006. That was all the coaches, all the sports in St Helens, the other sports development people, and the award, the Coach of the Year. And anyway, we were sat there with a few players, and Mike Feddick, who was the head of sports, was there, having a couple of pints and having a chat. It gets a bit monotonous after a while, these things drag on. And I said, "Come on, Mike, let's go. I've had enough." He put his hand on me, and this guy's a black belt at karate. I wasn't going to argue with him. So I sat there and I folded my arms. And now the final thing, they build up to the final accolade, and it was Coach of the Year. And I was lucky to be nominated. Well, not just nominated, but I won it. And
wow.
I thought to myself, it's not down to me, but it's down to the people who I got involved. Just being a coach, it's about involving other people and getting people who are keen to sort of be a foot soldier, to not just be one voice on my own, but encourage other people to get into my gang, as it were. So Mike said, "Oh, congratulations." So I went on to Merseyside Sports Development Team as a local winner, and I think I came third across Merseyside. So not bad. I enjoyed it.
Not bad, is it? Not bad for Mr. Rounders.
Yeah. Well, that's me. That's my email address. And when I worked at the universities, I worked at Edge Hill locally in South Lancs, UCLan, Preston. What else did I go? And Edge Hill, UCLan. Oh, JMU, John Moores, on the banks of the Mersey there. And there was a lady called Track Dinning, who was in charge of sports and PGCE. And there was a lady called Emma O'Hanlon, who's obviously Irish. And she was really strict on these students, like wearing a proper kit, uniform, and university logo and everything. And she was like a teacher, but she was only in her early 20s, so she wasn't that experienced, but she was a real taskmistress, and she kept everyone in line. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So how many years did you do that for then?
Say about 10 or 12.
Ah, fabulous.
Well, the difficulty I had, because schools have different agendas and different boxes that things have to go into, and as a coach or coach tutor, I had to fit into them. And at the time, I'm still driving buses, by the way, but that's my job with the Aretha. I was working at Halton Transport, which is near Widnes. And I used to actually pay people on the day off to come in to drive my bus while I'd go to a different part of the country and deliver rounders courses. Anyway, eventually the boss found out that I was paying them more to go and drive my bus than the company were paying in overtime. Oh, I got caught in the end, but never. I mean, it was great all over the country. Anyway, if it was in the Midlands, I'd drive down the night before and get a B&B, travel lodge or whatever, and then just be fresh in the morning, relax.
And what I've found with all these interviews that I've been doing is what a community rounders is and how inclusive it is. And you've already talked about a few examples.
Yeah,
but it's just a great sport to be part of.
Yeah, it is inclusive, and at whatever level, it's a game that men and women can play. Kids of all shapes and sizes, ability. We've got the facility to adapt the game. I mean, for example, if a child has hand-eye coordination problems, we have looks like a giant golf tee, well, with a cup on the top that holds the ball, like your egg, your egg cup, and you just whack it off there. If that doesn't work, we'll use a football. We'll play kick rounders, because as long as it's got the R word in it, we're not bothered. It's, we're not an elitist sport. We're very much an involvement sport. We're having pathways for people to take. So if they are talented, they can go the international route. If they just want to play for the health, there was a government scheme for Change for Life about 10 years ago. Anthony Wall-Thompson was involved in that. Ed Balls was a sports minister. And I met them in London at a conference, and I was there with my rounders hat, giving out leaflets and saying, Change for Life. It's about, again, making it available. Even like going down to doctor's surgeries where they have healthy living teams. Helena Housing, I was going to tell you about, they got funding. A chap called Neil Morris, who was a rugby league player at Blackbrook. And I said to him, a healthy living team, how about getting families on the council estates? Because they provide council properties, playing against each other. And St Helens is only 6 miles, 8 miles square, something like that. So it's not massive. But these kids who live in the council estate, they only see their estate. They don't think about another part of town. That wherever they live, be it Thatto Heath or Blackbrook. Apologies to people who don't know what Thatto Heath, Blackbrook is. And actually, I arranged for a transport for them and the families to go and play a match in a different part of town against kids off the council estate in that place. And they're still playing now on the fields, but I don't get involved. I'm quite happy that it's still going on. It's plate spinning, isn't it? It's just give them a little tickle every now and again and keep people moving.
And that's so important for people that don't know how. Particularly, it's very northern, isn't it? Around them not shifting from their communities, not going out of their communities, and particularly when you begin to look at sort of gun crime, knife crime, that's sort of instilling within these communities, and it's all because they don't know or they've never met the people from the other communities, and how sport, and in this case, rounders, can really make that difference.
It can make a massive difference. It's showing them what's available. And that there is other things to be doing, nice things that involve people. And I think one of the biggest things we need to address at the minute is the fact that a lot of younger people seem to have their own world and they don't see what's outside it. They don't say, I wonder how Julia's getting on at the rugby league, and things like that. It's almost and sport, any sport, not just rounders, is great for making friends, because normally when you make friends, you're probably adversaries on the field. In rugby, you're not setting bells out of each other, then you shake hands at the end of it, And that's one of the things that attracted me to rounders. It's so malleable, pliable, adaptable, all these words that you can throw in the mix. And if people are having a laugh doing it, then great. I had to give a kit to a local hospice called the Willowbrook Hospice, so that people could sort of play for fun, maybe throw £1 in the hat, for playing. So part of the funding that I got, I bought kit bags from WAF Sports, which was Alan's company, to give to them, to basically put in the lockup and just dig it out like you would do a picnic hamper. And then put it out when we get the weather to actually do it. And again, helping the local hospice to raise funds. So that was another idea. I always come up with 10 ideas. 6 or 7 might be rubbish, but I'm hoping at the end of the day, 3 good ones.
Hey, we all need ideas, people, to make it happen and to really make that difference. You know, from what you're saying, is making a difference to so many people's lives and helping communities gel, which is just so important, isn't it, in this day and age, but also in the past around fear comes from not knowing people or not knowing about people, doesn't it? Because they're in the opposite side of the road or street or wherever. And once you get to know them, you notice that, well, actually, we're all the same.
Yeah. People make judgments in short time. Quite often they're wrong, because in the mind, they say, oh, we don't like the look of him, don't like the look of her, you know, he looks aggressive, he looks nasty. And it might be just the shape of their eyes or the nose or whatever, you know. And without knowing them or saying, hello, you know, within the first 10 seconds whether they want to talk to you or whether, oh, he's not so bad after all, you know, and this kind of thing. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I always say a smile speaks every language.
It does. It
Doesn't
does.
it?
And I mean, I'm quite thankful that I've had touch wood, a pretty nice life at the moment. I was fortunate as a kid. Both my parents were teachers, so I didn't really want for anything. But in the, I think it was 1980s, I worked as a local rent collector for the local authority, and I met some families who were really poor and didn't have an awful lot. Then I ended up doing part-time work in the local children's home. So I used to go for my rent job in the day, and then in the evening I'd do sleepovers in the homes. Obviously, you've got to have a police check, CRBs or DABs, what they call now. And I'd do that and then go back to do the rent job in the morning. So I met a lot of families who didn't have an awful lot. But I used to take them to the girls especially wanted to go to Saints because I was involved with the commentaries and whatever. And we go to Chippy afterwards because that's what you do, you know, with your own kids. Just go for a split and fish or split and sausage, because I didn't want them to think that the council had this bottomless box of money, you know. Because when they went back to their home families, hopefully they didn't have money to buy expensive fish. So and they loved it, and doing simple things like that. And again, the girls really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think is your proudest achievement in Rounders?
I think involving so many people is the big thing. I mentioned the coach of the year, etc. One thing that I haven't mentioned yet is we put a team in the Gary Kelly Cup. Gary Kelly was a young Irish lad who was killed by a bomb in the middle 80s, I think it was.
Yeah, was that Warrington?
No, that was well after that one. But the one in Ireland goes back to the big troubles. Then when he got a pot of money from Europe and said, hey, if we stop fighting, we might be able to just tolerate each other and, you know, not get along, but just, you know, do our own thing kind of thing. And the Gary Kelly Cup, they play a softball, which is very similar to Rounders. And they have a big, like a Jaffa orange, that's the size, with a big seam of it. So it's like a baseball. And I spoke to a chap called Padder O'Tooten, who was the head of the GAA. The GAA is the Irish Sports Association, covering all sports. And anyway, I sent him a message saying, oh, well, do you fancy playing Rounders? And he said, well, do you fancy playing softball? So I took my team, Canterbury Belles, to Cookstown in Northern Ireland. And we stayed at this big posh hotel. And we played in the Gary Kelly Cup. But the agreement was we'd play their game, softball, which means running like 20 metres, 20 metres, 20 metres, which is a lot bigger than a round pitch, and then diving on a mat. And they would play our game. So there was teams from all over Ireland, north and south. There must have been 20 odd teams there, and it was a festival. Luckily, the weather wasn't too bad. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things. And basically, it's just a number. Lots of little things have made it. It's not one particular thing. It's just being there, being involved. And you mentioned smiling before, and I think if you can put a smile on somebody's face and it's not cost anybody anything, and they remember you for the right reasons, then you've done a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've changed so many people's lives through just what you're doing. It sounds amazing. So is there anything that you've not talked about that you think would be really useful for everybody to know? You've just had phenomenal, just listening to you now, I could listen to you for hours.
Oh, thank you. Can
But,
you tell my wife that, please?
I will, I'll tell her.
She's hiding somewhere at the back.
She's not going to forgive me, is she?
I don't want to disturb her because she's cutting the grass. Oh, I don't know, something not mentioned. I don't think there is anything, to be honest with you. I think one of my main things is I believe in being honest and straight with people. And even if you have a difference of opinion, it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's having the ability to sit up and say, "Do you know, Julie, I've never thought about that." Yeah, you might have a point there. I think you've got to be open-minded to new ideas, changes, not get stuck in the mud, and just let's not go with the flow. It's too because that's like easy riding. That's like surfing through life. Sometimes you have tough decisions to make, etc. I think it's really connecting with people and around us is just for me, was one of the great ways of doing it. And I still meet people in now who are hobbling through town because they're full of arthritis and whatever, and they say, "I did enjoy it though," So
Yeah.
that's nice.
That is lovely, isn't it? And you've just, as I've been doing all these interviews, just really encapsulated what Rounders about as one as being inclusive, as around being all ages, around it really making a difference to people's lives and changing people's lives because of that, because it brings those communities together. So it's absolutely wonderful, and particularly the work you did around, and at that time I was working for the Rugby Football League, so knew how important going into those different communities to give them those options throughout the country, and you did that as a job, which is just phenomenal, isn't it? Because then it's like a ripple effect, isn't it, that you do one and then it just sort of cascades into so many different areas.
Yeah, I mentioned the plate spinning earlier on. It's keeping in touch with people. When I was going to the PDM's partnership development meetings and things like this, there's about 6, which involves maybe 50, 60 schools. So in effect, by going to the one meeting, you can be talking to 50, 60 schools. It's a way of, throwing a big stone in a lake rather than a little pebble, And the bigger your stone, the more the ripples and the longer they last going further afield. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed. We've talked for a lot longer than this conversation, but an absolute pleasure to meet you. And just congratulations on everything you've done. You should be so proud of everything that you've done.